Episode 37, Craftsman, TVman, Journeyman, the founder of Harp Design and the star of Woodwork, Clint Harp. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Clint Harp. Clint and his wife Kelly own their own handmade furniture design business, Harp Design, in Waco, Texas. He was formerly a regularly recurring guest in a hit TV show Fixer Upper, and currently stars in his own television series called Woodwork. His new book is called Handcrafted, a woodworker's story. Clint, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You say you first got inspired from your grandfather at a young age. So was he a carpenter?
He was. He was a home builder here in Atlanta, actually, where I'm from. And I just happened to be fortunate enough to kind of tag along by his side on job sites at a young age when I wasn't allowed or even strong enough to do any of the work that he was doing. But he was constantly building houses and fiddling around on land that he had purchased, whether it be up in North Georgia or wherever. And, the way he started was he went up to Virginia, parts of Virginia, and found colonial-style homes. And he took just really incredibly precise notes on everything that they were doing up there and how they built those houses. And then he came back down to Atlanta and he replicated it. So his houses were all built in a very, original colonial kind of way. He didn't take a lot of shortcuts, and it took him a while to build the houses, but they were works of art. And so I got to see that and be around it and learn the value of doing things the right way and the value of, the old school way of doing things. And I just got to see that firsthand. So when I grew up, I began to realize that I inherited his genes for building. I inherited his genes for trying something new, even if you don't know how to do it. And I liked working with wood. And so that's what I did.
Well, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that your first childhood dream was actually to be a musician.
Yes.
Did you ever consider pursuing that?
Yeah. Even before that, it was baseball. Atlanta Braves, the whole deal. I wanted to play baseball like with all of my life. That's all of my heart. That's what I wanted to do. Didn't work out. But then music became a passion. My mom is a musician. My dad's a drummer. My uncle is a very accomplished musician. Actually, was a part of a band up in Canada. Was signed by Sony Canada and has been a singer-songwriter for years in the industry. And so it definitely runs in my blood. And I can sing, I can play the guitar, but I can't write a song to save my life.
Or hit a baseball.
Or hit a baseball. That's right. I mean, it's just batting for the cycle over here. But it was definitely something that I tried. And that's part of why I wrote Handcrafted the way that I wrote it, is letting people in on the details of the things that didn't go the way I wanted to, the dreams that didn't work out. Because I think that's important for people to hear. A lot of times we hang on to a dream forever and we keep pushing and pushing and pushing. We want so badly, for this one thing to work out. And sometimes you just have to let go.
But how do you know? How do you know when it's time to let go?
I think it's different for everybody. I'd love to say there's this moment that happens. Maybe it is a moment. Maybe it's a series of moments. For me, it was just realizing this rock isn't going anywhere. Like I keep pushing, it's not moving. So I need to let it go. We've all watched American Idol, 1,000 times, or we've heard of it or whatever. And great show. But how many times you see that mom or that kid that comes on, they can't sing, or maybe they're kind of good, but they're not like great, and they get rejected by the judges and they walk out and they're like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. I could be the next, whatever. And it's not true. No, you're not. You're not good. It's not your thing. And it's okay. That's the thing that people need to know. It's okay. That didn't work out. You weren't meant to be a singer. And I think there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to be that guy, that's like years down the road going, I could have been, Paul McCartney, but I just never, got the chance. No, I had plenty of chances. And, it just didn't work out. And it was just okay with me. And I go into detail a couple times in the book at different times where I even bought musical equipment and really tried to pursue this thing, and it just continued not to work out. And when I said goodbye to that dream, and when I finally put that to rest and said, you know what, I think there's just something else for me in life, that's when other doors began to open.
You studied at Baylor, and you barely graduated. It sounds like, we're talking like by the skin of your teeth.
Yes.
Why do you think you struggled so much in school?
Well, growing up, and I talk about this a lot, very vulnerably, and or at least I try to, and was really appreciative of my mom allowing me to write about my childhood too, and like the way I was brought up in a vulnerable way, because it's not to put my childhood down or anything, but it's just to be honest about it. And part of that was that school just wasn't a huge priority in my house. I mean, my mom and my stepdad, of course, they wanted me to do well. But it wasn't like that. No one was pushing me. Nobody was saying, hey, you got to, get your homework done. You got to make sure are your grades to this standard. There just wasn't any of that. And I actually tell a funny joke, to me it's funny, about how my mom would always say if I came home with a bad grade, she'd go, well, honey, it's okay. Don't forget, I had to repeat the 5th grade because I really didn't understand math. So just do your best. We were going through hard times, and there were other stressful things. And so the last thing I think she was concerned about was a bad grade. Well, I just kind of learned to do whatever it took to get by in school. And I actually also didn't really like school. I didn't like the idea of sitting in a room and listening to a teacher for an hour and reading a book and like doing homework. It was lame to me. I think it's an incredibly valuable thing. And as an adult now, I realize how important it is. But then I didn't like it. I wanted to go and just try things and just, invent something or do something. And, I was more of a doer, like out in real life practice. That's what I wanted. I wanted to go out with my granddad and like build all day. I didn't want to be in school. It was boring. And I went to college and basically carried that with me. And I just said, you know what? I'm really here to pursue the things that I love. I pursued music during college. I pursued ministry during college, to the point of where I did those things really well. Music and ministry, I was constantly involved in stuff and was, well known for the gifts that I had and the things that I could bring to that world. And school, it was like I was just there because you got to go to college, and all right, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get my degree. But I'm not going to try very hard. I'm going to try the things that I love, Well,
you mentioned the ministry. I mean, you grew up in a pretty religious Southern Baptist household.
Right.
And became a pretty strict adherent yourself.
Yeah, I did.
Then when you and your wife, Kelly, were on a mission to Europe, your worldview suddenly started to change. What happened?
Yeah, I was surrounded by people that had a different worldview. I was in a different world, I was in Paris, France, and not the Deep South. I wasn't in Dallas, Texas, Waco, Texas, wherever. It literally is to the point of I was around people that were okay with drinking. That was foreign to me. I wasn't usually around that. And, slowly but surely, my eyes began to open, and it was way more than just drinking. It was about just the world, how big it is, how many millions of people are out there with different ideas about things, and they've been brought up in a completely different environment and religious structure and family structure, just the whole thing, like everything, the culture, everything is different. And you go, wait a second, I basically grew up in a world that not necessarily one person, but kind of an overarching theme was, we're right, this is the way, this is the only thing that's true, this is what you follow, everything and everyone else is wrong. And follow these things and you're good to go. when you get outside of that bubble and you live immersed with other people, that begins to crumble really quickly. And you begin to realize, wait a second, there has to be more to things, to life, to spirituality, to religion, to whatever, than just this like very strict, this is it. It just began to open my eyes and my heart to believing that God was bigger and more mysterious than I probably believed at the time. I know he was, or she was. Hello? I mean, like, that's the other thing. God was this white American Jesus, white American man, like it just, and that's not true. It's so much more complicated than that. And at the time, there were religious leaders like Brian McLaren is an author who started to write things that began to shake up the religious world. And on down the road, like Rob Bell and some others, Anne Lamott, one of my wife's favorite authors, he just began to write about God and spirituality and stuff and talk about it in a totally different way. And all those things just began to open my eyes, and I'm so glad that they did.
So just to fast forward the story a little bit.
Yeah.
Later on, you'd go on to marry, you'd have kids. And once you had kids, you felt the responsibility, as a lot of people do, to provide for your family.
Sure.
And you got a job in medical sales. It was actually a pretty good gig. You were making really good money. It didn't last all that long. And you said, and I quote, "Day by day, one sales call at a time, it felt like a little piece of me was dying." You just didn't feel like you were being true to yourself?
Yeah, there are people that are made to be in that industry for the right reasons. And then there's me. There's the guy that was in it because he wanted to get a job that would make a lot of money. I have no medical background whatsoever, but I knew that pharmaceutical sales, that world, that there was a lot of opportunity. And so I jumped into that world going, you know what? I'd like to help people. I would. I think that's a great thing, and I really do want to help people, and I could make money while doing it. Great. And after a while, Glenn, I started to see dollar signs hanging over sick people's heads. I began to hear about a patient, and I would see that patient and start calculating in my head what that meant for me financially. And that is what I mean when I say a part of me was dying every day, because that's just not me. I'm learning about myself that I do care about people. I started my business with my wife, Harp Design Co., because I wanted to just build tables to bring people together. I care about unity. I care about people seeing past their differences. And I care about healing, whether that be a person's personal healing or maybe healing within a family or a friend or just enemies or whatever it might be. That's why I started doing what I wanted to do, building tables. And as I began to just keep going farther and farther down the path in medical sales, the financial side of it and the getting bonuses and all this stuff based on people's illnesses, I couldn't separate them out. There are wonderful people that I worked with who could. I just couldn't, and I had to walk away from it.
So a lot of people might say in that instance, okay, start your own thing while you're working with the income.
Yeah.
Think it through, come up with a business plan.
Great idea,
raise
Glenn.
some capital. Right, where was I? I mean, all kidding aside, you sort of woke up one day and said, enough is enough, and you quit cold turkey. I mean, no backup plan or anything.
That's right. I just had enough, and I had dreamed about this idea with my wife, and I had just this desire that was growing in me to actually build furniture. And, it was like something calling me out to the garage saying, come out here and build some stuff, and we'll go from there. As I write in the book, we had $25,000 in savings, and with 2 kids at the time and a mortgage and a car payment, insurance, all that stuff, that goes very, very quickly in 2011. But we decided, you know what? If we don't try, we're never going to know. And if we let the fear of all the things happening that we try and avoid, and by things I mean bankruptcy, bad credit, home foreclosure, car repossession, whatever, I don't want those things. And we fought really hard even after we quit. I quit my job and we decided to go for this. We fought really hard for those things not to happen. We did. But the fear of those things happening, we finally decided that's not going to keep us from going for our dreams. If any of that stuff happens, if we miss a payment, if we have to sell our car, if we have to sell our house or something like that, okay, it's worth it for us to try. And because you know what, I'll just go get a job somewhere else. Maybe it won't be as good of a job as I have now, but we'll just fight our way back. But if we don't try, we'll never know if we could do it.
Well, trying to make it on your own as a carpenter, it was pretty tough going. Pretty steep learning curve, both in terms of learning the craft of designing tables, along with how you're actually going to make money out of it. Looking back, do you think maybe you underestimated the challenge of it all?
Oh, I definitely did. I mean, 100%. But I always do that. Yeah, ask my wife. It's very typical for me. I'm one of those people that goes, I can do this,
You sort of fly by the seat of your pants.
Yes. And it's served me well, that kind of thing, but it's also done its own damage too. And so I've learned not to do that all the time. But there have been times where it served me well. As my wife says, Clint, if you didn't do that, you'd probably never try the things that you've tried. I've never written a book before, Glenn. Big shocker here. Okay. Breaking news. I've never written a book. I wanted to. 17 years ago, I bought a computer with my first tax return with my wife and started writing a book when we first got married because I've wanted to write a book for the longest time. Finally got the opportunity and, a couple years ago, and I really wanted to write it. And so I did. I had a writing coach, Michelle Burford. She's amazing. And when I interviewed her, I said, hey, here's the thing, Michelle, I actually want to write the book. Are you okay with, basically coaching me through this? Because I really want to write it. And she was like, 100%, I'm all in. And so I sat down and really wrote it, and I've never done it. And I mean, there were tears shed. There were moments where I was going, what in the hell am I doing? This is horrible. This whole thing sucks. This is like, no one's going to want to read this. And it was an emotional process. And yes, it was more than I expected because I've never done it. I had no idea. And I never had built furniture as a full-time job either. And so, yeah, it was tougher than I expected because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know. But the fear of not knowing is not enough for me. There's a lot of things we don't know, but you just have to go out there and try. And that's when you learn what you need to know.
You were pretty open about how this move, this startup, with a few $1,000s left in the bank, that it was a fairly decent strain on the marriage. And, here you were desperately trying to put a single table together, but you felt the need to put on this confident face in front of your wife to make her feel rest assured that everything's going to work itself out at the end. But it got worse and worse the more you tried to put up that front. And it wasn't until you finally let yourself be vulnerable and admit to her that you were scared. And maybe you didn't quite know what you were doing. And it was at that moment that the tension dissipated and your relationship grew stronger.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's mostly because my wife's an amazing woman and helped teach me that, because she really doesn't settle for anything other than real and honest.
So she saw through you. She saw through the facade.
Yes. Oh, she totally did. And it was uneasy between us because there I am. I've quit a job in sales and I'm still trying to sell her on the fact that everything's fine.
You're still selling after.
Yes, I'm still selling. I am 100%. I'm trying to sell her that this is fine. And it's that movie where, you've seen it and there's some scene where everything's just, coming down and some guys running around going, it's wrong, man. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. That was what was going on. It was like, no, this is not good. It's all bad here. This is not working. And she knew that. She knew that I didn't know what I was doing. She wanted to know that I knew that I didn't know what I was doing.
And to admit to her.
Yeah, she wanted me to admit that to her. Exactly. She just wanted me to say, I don't know what I'm doing, Kelly. And if she could hear me be honest about it, then she could know, okay, he's not hiding anything anymore. Now we can move forward in honesty and realness, and we can move forward together. If you're lying about this, if you're not being honest, then how can I trust you? How can I trust this process? How can I really feel good about anything that we're doing? And she was exactly right. And in our marriage, the more, in terms of my own personal, contribution to it and also what I receive from it, the more I am able to say, you know what, I don't know. And I don't know what I'm doing. And what do you think? And can you help me? The better things get. It was tough learning that lesson. It really was. But I'm so glad that we went through what we went through, because it's paid so many dividends ever since.
Well, you were pretty much down to your final nickel when you had some fortuitous encounter with a stranger at a gas station. So what happened?
Yeah, so we had moved to Waco. I quit my job in May of 2011, and then my wife decided she wanted to get her master's. She got a full ride at Baylor, so we moved to Waco. I volunteered at Habitat for Humanity when we moved there because I had no shop, to speak of, and I, wanted to keep doing something that was in the vein of building. Start volunteering day one. We go to some friend's house for dinner. During the course of the evening, the husband asked me what I'm doing. I said, I'm looking for a shop eventually, but right now I'm volunteering with Habitat. He says, well, when you need a shop, call this guy, Chip Gaines. I said, okay, great. He gave me his number. A couple days later, I called him, left a message. I never heard back from him. 4 months later, we're now living in Waco for 4 months, and that's the moment when we were drained. And it was like, okay, joke's over, like, gig's up, we're out of money, like, this is not good. It's time to, like, pack this up. Kelly, you keep getting your master's. I'm going to go over here to Home Depot or wherever. I'm going to get any job that anybody will give me, and I'm just going to start making some money so that we can pay the bills. And I called her one afternoon and bawling my eyes out, and she said, let me come pick you up with the kids, and we'll go to the park. And I was like, okay, that sounds weird, but fine. So we went to the park. And after we went to the park, I got back in the car, and the gas light came on, and I said, okay, let's go get gas. And we don't have any money, but we'll just get closer to maxing out the one credit card that we have or whatever. And so we went, and we got gas. And as it was filling up, I was sitting in the car waiting for it to fill up, and this black truck pulled in front of me, and it said Magnolia on the side. And it parked right on the other side of the pump as me. And a guy got out. I got out. And said, hi, my name's Clint. I was calling you guys looking for this guy named Chip. And, the only reason I was getting out talking to whoever that guy was, is because I just thought, Hail Mary time, I mean, why not? And the funny thing about it, Glenn, is I look back on that, I didn't have any reason to need a shop, and I didn't have anybody, to build for, And the reason somebody had given me his number was he was going to help me find a shop, right? So I was still holding on to this idea that, like, I don't have any clients, I don't have anybody to build for, but if I can just get a shop, maybe I could just go and build a few tables and, like, sell a couple of them for, like, a few $100s, here or there, and just we can scrape together a little bit of a living. And that was it. So that's why I got out of the car, was to ask him, hey, do you know this Chip guy? Because I'd love to talk to him about a shop. Well, I was talking, kind of running on for a couple minutes, and he stopped me and he said, yeah, I'm Chip, actually. I'm Chip Gaines. And I was like, great. And this is pre-fixer-upper. This is they don't even know, like, they're getting a show at this point. They have no idea about anything. In October of that year, they were filming the pilot for Fixer-Upper, and I was their carpenter.
It's a crazy story. It's so interesting in life, how these sudden and unexpected plot twists happen. Have you ever wondered, where would you be today had you not needed to refill your gas tank that day?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the reason why I wrote this book, actually, Glenn, is because the thing is like that moment at the gas station is like this amazing moment where there was like a little bit of like lightning being caught in a bottle. But that moment never happens if it weren't for all the other moments in my life and this insane journey that I've been on for my entire life, as I outline in the book. And that's why I wrote the book, because I want people to know all the crazy crap you're going through in your life right now, there's a reason. It doesn't mean it's leading you to a gas station where you're going to meet somebody, then you're going to get a show, or you're going to be on a show or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but there's a purpose behind it. And I don't know what that purpose is, but there's a reason. And it feels like we're running in circles sometimes. It feels like, man, I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a musician. It didn't work out. But that's okay. It's all happening for a reason, and it's leading you to something. And for me, all those moments, they were leading me to that gas station. And the thing is, that gas station moment was leading me to other moments. And those other moments are leading me to something. Like, in other words, it's not over because I met Chip I haven't reached the pinnacle of my life, because I met a guy at a gas station. I just met an amazing person at a gas station, Chip, and went on an amazing journey with he and his wife and enjoyed it. And we all worked incredibly hard, and things have come from it, and they are doing their thing. I'm doing my thing. We're all still working hard and still going, okay, life, what else do you have for us? We don't look at it as okay, that was great. We reached it. We did it. We won the lottery. No, it was this amazing thing that never happened if it weren't for a bunch of other amazing things. And that thing will also create a bunch of other amazing things in the future. And I'm excited about whatever that is to come.
Yeah, it's like these doors open in our lives, and it's not just about do you step through it, it's what do you do once you're on the other side.
That's exactly right. What do you do with it? I mean, and you see that in sports, you see it in business, you see it in wherever. Let's use sports. A football team, wins a Super Bowl, and you look back on their season and you go, wow, did they get some lucky breaks? Okay, yeah, they did. But if you looked at all the other, 32 teams in the NFL or however many it is, if you looked at all the other teams that didn't go to the Super Bowl or didn't win the Super Bowl, did any of them get lucky breaks? Yeah, I'm sure they did. What did they do with them? That's the point, and you keep using whatever's thrown your way, because it could be a lucky break or it could be an unlucky break. What do you do with that thing that doesn't go right? I write about that in my book, where a table leg that I thought was a piece of crap ended up being the leg that we still use to this day. That was a complete failure, and it turned out to be a great success. So absolutely, what do you do with the opportunities that you go through in life? That's so very important.
So a lot of people, of course, are very familiar with Fixer Upper. Not everyone is. But on the show, you became known as this dumpster diving, reclaimed wood-loving carpenter. But for those that don't know you, it wasn't a character invented for the sake of compelling television. It's actually who you were well before the cameras ever began rolling. So what's the backstory with that?
Yeah, so when I quit my job to build furniture, I didn't have, we had money to live on, but I didn't have money to invest in starting a business. Great idea. So it's not like I could go to a lumber yard and say, all right, I want to buy, 10,000 board feet of white oak and walnut and maple and, give it to me. Let's go. Even if I had that, where was I going to put it? It's like, bad idea here, folks. Don't follow my example, I guess. But no, I had to get into the garage and start making stuff. And I didn't have money to invest in a bunch of lumber. And I also care about the environment. And those two things worked out great, because my wife had shown me some ideas of people making furniture out of pallets, but they were like this coffee table in front of us. It would be like if somebody took a pallet and put legs on it. So it was very literal, if you will, like it was a pallet table. Like you knew, oh yeah, that's a pallet with legs on it. And that's amazing and great. Like a lot of people have done some amazing stuff with that, but I didn't really want to do that. But for me, it was like seeing beyond the pallet and going, wait, that's not a pallet. That's just wood that happens to be nailed together in the shape of a pallet. If you deconstruct that, now you've got planks and you can do whatever the heck you want to do with it. So I went into my garage and I was like, okay, I don't have any lumber, but there's all these pallets out there. I've seen all this work that, my wife showed me online. I'm going to go and I'm going to just find a bunch of pallets. And just pick them up in my Honda Pilot, and I'm going to bring them home to my garage. I'm going to deconstruct them. I'm going to make a table out of them, and hopefully somebody will look at it and not go, oh, that's a pallet, that's a table. No, they'll look at it and go, wait, you made that was a pallet once? Are you kidding? And in the process, how many of those pallets am I going to be able to collect and make into furniture that would have gone to the dumpster, that would have, gone into a landfill? And so I just began collecting all these pallets and using reclaimed wood, and it just evolved from there into better pallets, in terms of quality, different types of wood, longer pallets, bigger pallets, and then it was construction material like that was being thrown away, and then it became antique pine from houses that were being torn down, and old barn wood from barn builders that were, didn't have the use for certain parts that they had deconstructed in old barns and built new ones out of it. And the stuff that they were throwing away was like gold to me. So, it just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And we still use reclaimed wood to this day. We buy responsibly sourced milled lumber as well. Walnut and maple and white oak and red oak and, hickory and pecan, different things like that. But we still make tables and products out of reclaimed wood as well.
So I was going to ask, does this dumpster diving moniker still fit today? Like, do you still identify with that earlier scrappy version of yourself?
100%. Everybody sees Clint Harp, the carpenter, he's got a book out and all this stuff, and that's great. I love doing all those things. I still see the guy that was in his garage in Houston just trying to figure it out and jumping into dumpsters and pulling out whatever lumber he could find to make things. And that's also been my whole life, basically taking whatever situation is thrown my way and making something better from it. And I don't regret any part of my life. I don't regret the fact that my parents are divorced. I don't regret the fact that I moved around a ton as a kid. I don't regret the fact that we didn't have a lot of money or have nice cars or whatever. I don't regret it. I love it, in fact, because it's made me who I am today. And it's made me the kind of person that, if things fall apart or if there's a problem, I look at it and go, okay, how do we solve it? And I like that. I like that about myself. And I would not be that way, I don't think, if it weren't for having to learn to survive growing up. And so, yeah, I always, no matter how many resources I have or get to work with or whatever, you cannot take that heart out of me. It's just, it's too ingrained. It's who I am. And I still see myself that way.
Well, what started as a pretty small role grew and grew as your popularity grew on that show. And of course, the popularity of the show itself kept increasing. And finally, you got your own show on Woodwork. So you essentially go from being this extra in someone else's show to being the star of your own show almost overnight. So you're the draw now. You're the reason people are tuning in. How does that feel?
Well, first of all, to be a part of a show is just an amazing thing. And it's something that isn't like a given. It's not something that I deserve or a right, It was a privilege. And Joanna kept calling me and asking me to be on that show and to build furniture for her. And I will never forget that. It was something she didn't have to do. I was never a contracted part of the show, in fact. So it was like a new season was coming along, and I didn't know, am I going to be in 2 episodes? Am I going to be in any episodes? Am I going to have? I don't know, And, she kept calling, and I'm just so thankful for that. And then from that, yes, then I got other opportunities. And it's funny, for you it feels like overnight. For me it felt like it took forever, because it was like 3 years plus of working on pilots and finally getting a green light to move ahead, first it was a webisodes, then it was a sizzle, then it was the pilots, and it was, just this long, excruciatingly just difficult process of waiting and waiting and waiting. And that's partly because for me, I'm a go kind of guy, I like to let's go, let's move, let's do something. And so the opportunity came around, and I don't see it much differently than what it was with Fixer Upper. I mean, I know that I'm like the focus of the show, but to me, it's still just a camera's in front of me. I'm talking to people. I'm working with my team, and I'm making stuff, and whether that's on my own show or someone else's show, it just sort of is what it is. Because you alluded to this earlier. You said that, the cameras they came around and they really caught you doing what you were doing, which is what I write about in the book, that like, it's not like they asked me to become a carpenter, or I said, hey, could I be the carpenter or become a carpenter on this show? It was, they found Chip and Joe doing what Chip and Joe were already doing, and they said, let's catch this on camera. And so when the cameras came around, they caught us doing what we were already doing. Does that make sense?
What's like Kelly said to you earlier, we were talking about the marriage, which is be authentic, be yourself. They captured who you were.
That's right. So if I'm getting to do that on the the DIY network for and on Woodwork, doing it for one season, or if I don't get any more seasons, okay, like I'm still doing what I want to do, and that is building things. And by the way, it's not just furniture; it's building a business. It's building relationships. It's building a career with me and my wife, taking this opportunity to write a book. That's not building furniture. A book is not building furniture, but I stepped away from building furniture for a good solid 4 months and wrote a book. And all the guys and gals at my shop at Harp Design Co., they carried the ball, and they were building and working and keeping everything going. And I stepped away and wrote a book. If I could retitle the book, it might actually be It's Not About the Furniture, because I love building furniture. I do. But what I really love is being creative, building things, trying new things, and being a trailblazer, and not being afraid to fail. That's what I like doing. That's what I love. And if furniture is what I get to do to exercise all of those muscles and those desires, great. Then I'll do that for the rest of my life. But if it evolves to something else, then great. I'm okay with that. Like I'm open. I'm open to what life has for me. Life is exciting that way to me. I'm not really just like focused on one thing.
Well, in large part, the success of the business is attributed to the success of the show and the fame that you acquired. Of course, fame has a double-edged sword. As you gain fame, of course, you slowly lose your anonymity. So what's that been like?
It is different for me in terms of, I do have less anonymity, totally. And my wife and I and our kids, we had to move out of our house that we did on Fixer Upper. We had to move out of that house because it was just, people were knocking on our door. People were wanting to take pictures in our yard and with us as we're playing basketball in the driveway. I mean, that definitely changed. And we love our family and have to protect our family first above all things. And so life, yes, it's definitely changed. But I keep doing the things that I want to do regardless. So I keep coaching my son's basketball team. I keep coaching my son's football team up at school. I run. I don't just run in my house on a treadmill. I go run through the neighborhood. I run through downtown Waco.
With a mask on or no mask?
No mask. No, I just go. I mean, it's like I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. I mean, obviously, things could change. It could be different one day, but it's not for me to this point. And I'm definitely more well known, and definitely people want to come up and talk to me, which is great, and I appreciate it. But I fight hard to just keep doing the things that I really want to do, because again, quite honestly, I can, because it's not as extreme for me as Chip and Joe and as for others. But I definitely fight hard to maintain the life that I want.
So throughout all the success, you're somewhat self-deprecating. You keep referring to yourself as this unkempt, unsophisticated, buck-toothed kid from the South. It doesn't sound like you've got very strong self-image. What's behind that?
I actually do. That's what's funny about it. I just am not afraid to talk about the ugly side, if you will. I grew up in a house full of, I'll say comedians, but also wannabe comedians. You know how we all are. But was constantly watching Johnny Carson or Jay Leno or, Conan O'Brien, Jimmy Fallon, just throughout the years. I love comedy. I love Seinfeld. I love all these different things. And of course, a part of comedy is self-deprecation, right? I mean, it's funny. It just is when you don't take yourself so serious and you're not afraid to kind of like point out your own flaws. It's funny. If nothing else, it's funny to me. And I am okay with laughing at myself. And so I'm actually a very confident person in a lot of things. But that being said, you have touched on a little bit of truth there for sure. And my wife talks to me about it because she's very smart and into personalities and like she studies personalities and all that kind of stuff. She's really great about all that. She's pinpointed things in my life that, she's gone, I wonder if you say that right there because you actually are kind of nervous that, you'll be found out, to be a fraud.
Imposter syndrome.
Yep, which I talk about in there. And I definitely have that.
We all do. Not everyone will cop to it, but we all do.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, who the heck am I to be interviewing you? Right?
Well, I think you're doing a great job. But that's exactly the point. You're sitting there going, I'm not adequate to do this. What am I doing this for? I got to stop. I just run out of the room. There's a Glen-shaped hole in the wall where you just, decide to run out. We all have it. And I've got my moments, and I'll tell you, the more you get recognized, the less anonymity you have, as we were just talking about, boy, that imposter syndrome just gets really, really intense because now it's like you're writing a book and your face is on the book and, you're like, at what point is somebody going to go, hey, dude, you're an idiot. Go away. Climb back in your hole, So, yeah, I struggle with it for sure.
I'm going to talk about the craft of making tables for a minute.
Sure.
There's a really interesting quote that I love from the book. Looking at a pile of wood on my shop floor might be one of my favorite things to do. What might appear to be a mess is really a beautiful creation just waiting to be put together. It sounds a little bit like how Michelangelo described his work. There's a quote from him, "Every block of stone has a statue inside, and it's the task of the sculptor to discover it." So I was curious, do you always have a vision early on, or is it a somewhat messy process trying to piece together this work of art?
It is a messy process, and at the same time, I do tend to have a vision. A lot of times, I'll give you, for instance, my mother-in-law had a little shop where she had a little resale shop. She sold kids' clothes. And it was down in Kerrville, Texas, in the hill country. And she needed a cash wrap, the place where the cash register is and the whole deal. Just, she wanted me to build her something. And so I went over to her shop, and I looked back in the back of her shop, like in the kind of the alley or whatever, just behind the shop. And I said, "Hey, what's that over there?" And she's like, "Oh, these old like barn doors that were here, and I don't think they're just throwing them away." And I was like, "Oh, there's your new cash wrap." She's like, "What?" And I was like, "No, I'm serious. That's your cash wrap right there." And she's like, "No, it's not enough wood, And I was like, "No, it is. I got it, And there was a part of me that, I guess there is a part of me that like I can sort of like see that, and I'm not doing any complex calculations, but I can sort of like see it and spatially go, no, that's enough to do. Like I'm like sort of taking it apart in my head, and going, all right, this is that long, that's this long, and whatever, and this is how, okay, yeah, no, that'll be enough. Like I think I can make it work, And I just took it and used it to make this cash wrap for my mother-in-law, and that she ended up selling that business, and that cash wrap is the same cash wrap that we use now in our storefront. And so, yeah, there is, again, and I think it goes back to what I was talking about before. I think sometimes, like for me, it was, all right, there's a problem in front of you, but in order to survive, if you will, to move forward in life, you got to figure this out, Clint. And so I just learned at an early age to sort of like take a total freaking mess and go, all right, how do we make something out of this? And I do that with furniture now. I talk about building the first armoire or armoire, depending on how you pronounce that, and making that for my wife. And, I just remember thinking, okay, an armoire is a box with doors on it. All right, let's buy some wood. Let's make a box. Let's put some doors on it, Look past what's lying in front of you and see what you can make out of it.
Well, one of your signature pieces of furniture, of course, is the table, the dining room table. It seems that a table is so much more to you than a piece of furniture. And I'm going to quote from the book again. I'm so happy knowing that family, friends, or strangers will gather around a piece that I built. That table will tell their stories and hold their memories. So it sounds like there's a strong emotional element for you in it.
There is. Coming from a split family, coming from a lot of struggle, the table was the place where I felt like I connected with my family. That's the place where I felt like, okay, we can all take a break from all the stress, whatever, and we can just sit down and eat, and we can talk. And, when there was pain, it could be carried on that table. The table could hold the weight of that pain or that stress or that sadness or the joy and the happiness or whatever it might be. We live in a world right now where we are more connected than ever before in social media. My grandmother's brother was a missionary in China way back, like 40s, 50s, like whatever. I mean, like long time ago, right? Like just forever ago. Back when, like, if you did that, it was like, see you later. You're gone. Like, hope to see you again. Now, you could feel like someone in China is your next door neighbor because you're just FaceTiming them. Hey, how's it going? Like, we're so connected. Social media, cell phones, the whole thing. And yet, loneliness feels like it's at an all-time high. Negativity, all-time high, it feels like. It's just out there. We're hearing it. We're seeing it. People are publishing their anger and their wrath and judgment. And this is our world. Everything is so divisive. And, here we are tonight in the Carter Presidential Library. Jimmy Carter, saw that a man was running for governor who was a segregationist. And he said, you know what? I don't want a segregationist to lead my state. So I'm going to run for governor. I'm going to do something about it, And that's the story that they tell here at the Carter Center and the Carter Library. And, he did something about it. For me, I grew up seeing, families split and torn apart. And again, I don't regret it. I'm thankful. I love all of my family and we're all close and it's great. But it was difficult. I see what that can do. And I see how divided we are as a country currently. I see how negative things can get. And for me, that was like my way of going, you know what, the thing that I can do, where Jimmy Carter's like, I can become governor. I'm like, you know what, I can build a table. I can make a table that hopefully people look at and they say, you know what, I want to sit at that table. I want to sit there with my family. I want to sit there with my friends. I want to sit there with anybody. And I want to find common ground. And if I can build a few tables where people do that at, then I've accomplished something, at least for myself, because I believe in that. I believe in sitting down and being vulnerable with each other and taking all of our facades off and away and getting rid of that and solving problems together. And if we can do that, I think that, yeah, we're moving in the right direction.
Well, the book is one great work of self-discovery. It seems like finally you've come to a point in your life where you have the essence of who you are. And here's a quote. What I am is a journeyman, a dreamer, a kid who once sat at the base of a tree and imagined what was possible. A guy who now stands at the foot of a mountain trying to claw my way to the top, knowing there's another peak right around the corner. These days, I'm okay with landing in a field of unknowns and being required once again to figure things out. So is that essentially who you are at your core? You're a journeyman?
Absolutely. In fact, that was going to be the title of the book. The reason it was going to be that is because for me, again, it's not about the furniture. It's about this journey that we're all on. Someone asked me the other day, when building a piece of furniture, what do you think is the most important part of that process? And that answer is so easy for me. It's not finishing the table. It's not anything other than the process of when you decide you want to build that table to when you finish it, and all that stuff in between. That is the most important part, because that journey, that's where you learn everything you need to learn. That journey is when you realize that you can overcome a failure and you can make a mistake and you can be stronger because of it. For me, it's great to meet some guy at a gas station and get on TV and all that. But what's more exciting to me is the journey that led to that, the journey that was born from that, and the journey that comes after that. Because that's what we leave behind. We leave these stories of our journeys. That's who we are. We are not one moment. We as a people, as a human being, you are a collection of moments. And it's those moments that make up your entire life. And they are fascinating. The more we wake up to that, I think, the more we learn to be, as one author, Brennan Manning, he used to say, the most important place you can be is nowhere, meaning the now and the here, and the little play on words there. And, you know, the more we realize that our journey is so important, the more we wake up in every moment that we're living in, and we just take all of whatever it is from that moment that we're supposed to take, and we internalize it, and we learn, and we let it change us. That doesn't happen if we're focused on the next thing. If we're focused on, well, where's this going to get me? Well, what's this going to do for me? Well, where am I going to be in 5 years? There's a time to make plans for sure. And I talk about that in the book. It's so important to make plans, 100%. And I look down the road all the time. This decision I'm making, how will this affect me in 5 years? You know, I mean, so that is important, but it's so hard to do, and I don't do it well, but I try so hard to live in this moment, because this journey, this is what I have. This is it. These moments with my kids, coaching my son's team, or watching my girls dance, or, you know, playing Battleship with my daughter on the couch. You know, it's her favorite thing to do with me almost, you know, and it's like that's just baking cookies with my kids. Like, that is the stuff. That's it. And those moments are only here for a second, and then they're gone. And so I'm really trying to capture those moments and live into those moments and be a person who is trying to tell people, guys, the journey, that's it. That's the meat of life. So let's live into those journeys and really be awake to them.
So if the Clint of today, the TV show star, the author, the business owner, the philosopher, the journeyman, if this Clint could go back in time and see the earlier Clint coming out of Baylor, maybe slightly confused, scared, perhaps rudderless, what does this Clint say to that one?
Stop pretending. Like, stop pretending as quick as you possibly can. Don't worry about being somebody that you're not. A lot of this book is about the journey that I had to take of saying goodbye to the Clint that I constructed and created to protect myself from whatever was going on in my life as an early child or a young adult or whatever it was, or as a newlywed. I would tell him, don't worry about making that false version of yourself to protect yourself, because you're really just hurting yourself, and you're going to make it harder for yourself down the road. I now recognize that so much in my life, and I've learned to show up as me and be okay with that. And I end the book by inviting everybody to come sit around the table that I make. And the only requirement that you have is to be the truest, most honest version of yourself possible. That's it. Just come and be that. Don't worry about it. And if you can't be that yet, that's fine. You're still welcome. Just hopefully you'll learn to be that one day.
Fantastic. Clint, The journey you shared was really moving, and just learning through how you discovered yourself, how you reclaimed your life. It moved me. I know it's going to move a lot of people. This has been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and hear your story firsthand, and thanks for being part of the show.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me. Seriously, I'm honored, really and truly. And thank you for your kind words. That was really more than I deserve. So thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. You can subscribe to the show at iTunes, Stitcher, and theartofexcellence.com. I've got one small favor to ask. If you like the show, please take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate that. I'll see you next time.